Okay, I'm just gonna start. I wanted to say that when Raiden talked last week, it was awesome because I think guys like Raiden are a good guideline. He's what you want to be like. But I wanted to show you the other side of the coin, what you don't want to be like. And unfortunately, that's my story. Have you ever known anybody's parents who were on drugs and couldn't get it together? Everybody? Anybody? You can raise your hands. We're interactive. All right. Mine were as well. Have you ever known anybody whose parents went to jail? My mother went to jail when I was 4. Have you ever read a headline that said, "Man arrested for molesting a girl"? Y'all read the paper, come on. Have you ever thought what must have happened to that girl or what she must have been through? I could tell you. How about the headline, "Parents Guilty of Child Abuse"? You ever know somebody whose parents did that? Now you do. I called welfare to come get me when I was in state's custody. For years, I lived in a bunch of different places. When I was 13, I lived in a foster home where the parent made us go to church, where people jumped around and babbled all kinds of silly words. My stepmother, the saint, came and forced her way into the lady's house to try and rescue me, and she was put in jail. 3 days later, I was transferred to a home for girls who were troubled. You have no idea what kind of trouble that place taught me. I learned to be trouble in that place. No one had ever shown any interest in anything that had to do with me, until I found boys. My first encounter was a boy at school. We would run into each other in the hallways during class. Not many people in the hallways during class. And the first time we just kissed. The second time, his hands went to my butt. There you go. I'll tell you about that in a second. He took a piece of my heart and he didn't even know he had it. He wouldn't speak to me in the halls. If anyone were around, I wasn't. Why? I was good enough to touch, but not good enough to talk to. I had serious body issues. I was ugly, I was too thin, and then I was too fat. My hair was too stringy. Not tonight. I was so afraid of being picked on, I never talked. I'm serious, y'all, this was me. Yeah. One time when I was 14, I lived in another group home, and I met a guy. He was nice, he was cute, he was a little bit dangerous. After dating for a month, he finally talked me into having sex. I didn't want to, but he liked me, and he wanted me, so I gave in. He knew he had me then. He abused me daily, emotionally and physically. And that wasn't the only person who abused me. Have you ever known a girl from the headlines, homeless man charged in a rape? Now you do. I was pulled into a hotel parking lot by a homeless man and raped. I spent the night in the hospital and was sent back home. The director and the lady police officer informed me that I would get no pity because they didn't believe I was raped. They figured I wasn't a virgin, so what was the harm really? At that point, I stopped relying on authority. God, parents, the state. I had to take care of myself because nobody else would. It's kind of a punishment. I was sent to a summer program where I would go to school and get a job on campus. The director of the program, Dr. Susan Gaston, took special interest in me because I was the only person that she'd ever had in her program that was in a state home. After that summer, I went back to the same home for troubled teens. 4 months after being back there, I attempted suicide. I was put in a treatment facility, and again, Dr. Gaston was there to cheer me on. When I was released, I was put into yet another girls' home. I started dating my first actual love at 15. He was dreamy. I wanted him to be my everything. No one cared enough about me to tell me what I was doing was wrong, so we had sex whenever we could. I would run away from the home just to go be with him, giving sex, searching for love. Who cared? Someone did care. Dr. Gaston and her husband, Dr. Bobby Gaston, would come to the ghetto, physically yank me out of his house, and bring me to their home. After doing that enough times, they went to classes and became certified foster parents. They reintroduced me to church, and I would go every Sunday, and it was awesome for about 2 years. I didn't party, I didn't run away, I didn't do anything. Then I went to college, where I drank and did anything and everything I wanted to do. I had this emptiness in my soul my soul had been torn away. I knew then that I was not good enough to ever be loved. Then I flunked out of school, and my foster parents let me come home and get a job. I was still drinking and sleeping around, but who cared? I thought I was damaged beyond repair. My foster parents had finally had enough and told me if I had one more drink, I couldn't live there anymore. Well, I had a lot more than one more drink. I borrowed a friend's car and tried to drive to Mississippi to find an old boyfriend. I drove the car into the median on the interstate. I was unharmed and nobody else was hurt, thankfully, but when I got back to my foster parents' house, they told me to pack my stuff and go. So again, I wasn't good enough to keep a family, and I certainly didn't deserve love or security. Living on my own, I decided to go to beauty school. I met a guy and I was cutting his hair, and he asked me out on a date. We went, we had sex, a one-night stand. That weekend, my foster mom invited me to a women's retreat. Anybody here, if asked by a parent to go on a Christian retreat, would just be freaked out about it? Yeah, me too. But the joke was on me, because when we got there, she had no intention of hanging out with me. She brought me to the retreat and dumped me in a cabin with a bunch of other girls my age. I spent the entire weekend, I thought I was going to spend the whole weekend with a bunch of judgmental, gushy, non-smoking, non-drinking Christian weirdos. But I was the one who was judgmental. These girls were not wacko Christians that sat around talking about their last prayer time. They were gross and fun and silly. I had a blast. By the end of the retreat, I was feeling like I needed some alone time. So I went for a walk while everybody else was doing their worship time. And I had a little chat with the Lord. I found myself by a lake and I began to pray. God, what am I supposed to do? My friends have become my family. Am I supposed to leave them? Will they judge me because I'm trying to follow you? The emptiness I had always felt was beginning to change. The Holy Spirit was finally able to speak to me. Don't be afraid. I felt it was the voice of God, and I fell and cried on the ground. When I returned to Baton Rouge from the retreat, my friends didn't even notice I had changed. Did they even know me? Later on that week, I found out I was pregnant. The first thought was that I had to call one of those girls from the retreat because they were the only ones who would hear me. Only one I could get in touch with was Christy, and she told me to come right over, and I did. And then I told her, and I halfway thought she was going to pray over me and then never speak to me again. I could not have been more wrong. The next 9 months, I can't even describe it in words. I haven't to this day been able to describe it in words. There was no talk of my being pregnant, although it was clear that I was. Well, some people, one guy thought I just gained a lot of weight. That was weird. There was no judging me, only people who really loved me and were concerned about me. It was weird, but it was refreshing. I went through the pregnancy like everyone else does physically. Emotionally was another story. While most moms are planning to decorate their baby's room